Hi, I'm AJ.
ともえです。
And welcome to Learn Real Japanese, rule number 5. Thanks, Tomoe. Okay, let me explain rule number 5 in English for you. So, rule 5 is related to grammar. You remember back in rule number 2, I told you do not study grammar rules. Do not study Japanese grammar. Do not try to memorize Japanese rules. Don't get Japanese grammar textbooks. None of that stuff. So how do you learn Japanese grammar? Because, of course, Japanese grammar is important. You need to use it correctly. So how do you do that in a natural way, more like a Japanese child would? Well, one key was rule number 1. We talked about learning phrases, learning chunks and pieces of the language, groups of words. That's going to help your grammar. But a very powerful way to do this is through something called point of view stories. And this is a technique that Tomoe and Mayumi use to teach Japanese grammar in a natural, powerful way, without analyzing grammar, without memorizing a bunch of complicated rules. So what is a point of view story? How does it work? Well, it's very, very simple actually, but powerful. Basically, Tomoe and Mayumi tell you a story in Japanese, something simple and easy that you can understand. And let's say they use the present tense, for example. They say, okay, there was a boy, and the boy liked a dog, and they were best friends. So they tell you this in the present tense. And of course, you'll naturally get a feeling for the present tense because you're learning it in the present tense. Well, then what they do is they tell that same story again, but they just change the point of view. They might change the time frame, for example. So they might tell that same exact story again, but in the past tense. There was a boy, he liked a dog, they were best friends. That's how it would sound like in English. That's how it would sound in English. So here's what's great. You're not going to learn a bunch of complex, difficult rules about how to do the past tense in Japanese and what are the rules and what situations. None of that. We don't want you thinking about all that stuff. All you're going to do is listen to 2 versions of the story. One version will be in the present, one will be in the past. You will naturally notice that certain things change when it's in the past. You'll notice how the verbs change. And by listening, using deep learning, listening to these versions again and again and again, you'll get a natural feeling for each of these verb tenses. Without the need to analyze, without the need to know a bunch of rules, without the need to think about it. You'll notice how things change in the stories. And then, she might do another version of the story where it's told from a different point of view. So maybe in one version of the story, it's the boy is speaking. I am a boy. I like my dog. He is my best friend. And then in another version, it's told by an outsider. There is a boy. He likes a dog. The dog is his best friend. And so in this way, again, you can change and you can learn. You'll see how certain things change. You'll learn the different pronouns and all these other kind of grammatical points just by listening to different versions of a story. It's a much more natural way to learn Japanese grammar and to get a really deep feeling for the correct way to use Japanese grammar. It eliminates all of that thinking and analyzing that happens when you use textbooks and try to memorize rules. All of that confusion's gone, and instead you get this very simple, easy, natural understanding of Japanese grammar. And through deep learning, listening again and again and again to those different versions of the stories, you will very quickly have a strong natural feeling for Japanese tenses, past tense, present tense, etc., and for other Japanese grammar as well. These are called point of view stories. They're a very, very powerful way to learn Japanese grammar like a Japanese child would, through real situations, through listening to natural stories without the use of grammar rules. So, very important, very powerful rule. Rule number 5, use point of view stories to learn Japanese grammar. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.